And you know what time it is? It's time for KP's Video News. KP Video News, y'all. KP Video News, y'all. KP Video News, y'all. Right.
That's right. Time for KP's Video News, y'all. 4 alarm. That's right. I'm out here on the West Coast, but I've been knowing about this guy, man, for decades. Alberto Martinez, known as Alpo, from New York. So this guy, he ended up getting murdered yesterday. And this is one of those larger-than-life type characters, man, that went through life, living hard and fast and reckless. And he got caught up. Well, let me just tell the story. But anyway, he got murdered yesterday. And a lot of people in Harlem got mixed emotions, whether they, some are celebrating, some are, upset or whatever. But here's the story. You got a New York City drug kingpin and turned federal witness was shot and killed yesterday after returning to his home turf in Harlem. And Alpo Martinez, who once ran a cocaine dealing empire that stretched from New York to Washington, D.C. for several decades, was shot around 3:30 a.m. while sitting in the driver's seat of a red Dodge Ram on 147th Street near Frederick Douglass Boulevard in Harlem. And wow, I don't even know why he even went back to Harlem, man. I mean, sometimes old folks tell you, man, when you burn your bridges, there's nowhere else to go. So stay on the shore. Don't even bother trying to come back across. But he went back. And so anyway, gunshots erupted through the driver's side window, and Martinez was struck several times, including the chest, chin, arm. High-ranking police detective stated. And it said Martinez had entered into the witness protection program after his 2015 release from federal prison. And it's preliminary investigation right now, and they're looking into all the aspects of what the motive could be, including his past. They have every confidence that the investigation will proceed and will find justice in those responsible. The man was carrying a main ID with the name Abraham Rodriguez, but a top-ranking police official also told and stated that his true identity was Albert Martinez, Alpo. The bullet-riddled truck had Texas paper, temporary license plates, and no arrests were immediately announced. And it was a long time coming. He had a lot of enemies, and this was a person named Seth Ferranti, a former convict turned author of the book Crack, Rap, and Murder, The Cocaine Dreams of Alpo and Rich Porter. He speculated that anyone, from family members of those he killed or ratted out by Martinez to young gangbangers who know who he is and are trying to get some points, could have been responsible. In the streets and in the criminal underworld, when you do something like that, basically you looked on as a hero, Ferranti said, of Martinez's recent slaying. You earn points, you earn stripes. I was surprised Alpo was being so bold and brash. The dude is not bulletproof. And they said a lot of these mafia mobsters on YouTube, on the internet, as well-known informants, enjoying their notoriety and their infamy on social media, but they're even not going back to where they came from. Martinez was declared dead on arrival at Harlem Hospital Center, and past videos posted on social media in 2019 showed he had been back in Harlem since before, bragging to crowds about killing his best friend and former business partner, Rich Porter. So it said he was fearless, he was reckless, and he basically didn't care what anyone else thought and did what he wanted to do. And so it's like street justice, death before dishonor, outlaw creed is still there, especially in the criminal underworld and in prison. So stuff like that can catch up to you. It doesn't always catch up to you, but in Alpo's case, it did. It caught up to him. And I said, why he went back to Harlem, I have no idea. No idea. And the crooked friendship between Martinez and Rich Porter, they actually made a movie out in 2002 called Paid in Full, and rapper Jay-Z was one of the producers of the film. And news of his killing actually prompted a celebration from the family of Rich Porter in Harlem streets, and the news reported. And in accepting a plea deal, Martinez had confessed to 14 murders, including the 1990 murder of Rich Porter. A week later, Porter's 12-year-old brother, Donnell, also turned up dead after he was kidnapped and held for $500,000 in ransom money. In trying to raise the cash, Porter sold off cocaine belongs to Martinez, so Martinez killed him. We waited a long time for this day to come, and that's Rich Porter's niece said everybody's reaction right now is that they're celebrating. It's a celebration for Harlem, period, not just the family. And those killed by Martinez also included a notorious Brooklyn drug dealer by the name of Demencio Benson. Martinez had been further branded a traitor by agreeing to testify in D.C. federal court against underling of his criminal drug trafficking enterprise, including Wayne Anthony Perry, who worked as a gang enforcer in Washington, D.C. Martinez's gang was responsible for transporting more than 1,100 pounds of cocaine into the nation's capital during the late 1980s and early 90s, and sparing himself a life sentence. Martinez was sentenced to 35 years at ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison in Colorado, and he lived in a special area quarters known for high-profile informants. And so it was unclear if he was still involved in the criminal protection program, but I would say he was, since he had that alias. You know, he had an alias ID that was printed up in alias ID, and they didn't say it was a fake ID. So, you know, like I said before, the movie Paid in Full was supposed to be about this situation that, you know, this whole Alpo Martinez situation and all the stuff that had went down in Harlem back in the 80s and the 90s. And you know, Martinez inspired the character of Rico in the movie, and was played by Cameron, and the film followed the criminal exploits of the Harlem gangsters Rico Ace, which was inspired by AZ Faison, and Mitch, which was based on Rich Porter and their rise and fall in the criminal underworld. So they actually made a movie about these guys, even though they changed the names. The movie was based on these AZ Faison, Rich Porter, and Alpo Martinez, big time drug dealers in Harlem. Young kids, young guys that started out as kids selling drugs, and I mean, they sold a lot of drugs, man, a lot of drugs. Like I said, I knew about him all the way on the West Coast. So bad news travels fast. I'm telling you, man, this Alpo is gone. He's gone. Never should have went back to Harlem, man. Never should have went back to Harlem. I don't understand that one. But hey, he did what he did. And so it's like a bunch of crazy stuff going on in the world today. And you know, people trying to figure out, who is this Alpo guy? Who's this Alpo guy? Just go watch the movie Paid in Full, and then you'll see what his life was all about. Okay, this is local. They had a Halloween party there over the weekend. Now, I've been telling you folks, man, a bunch of you grown folks out here celebrating these crazy mixed up holidays that you don't know nothing about. You know, went from trick-or-treating kids out there getting candy. Now you got adults, man, they go totally crazy over this Halloween. Don't even know what they're celebrating. But anyway, Las Vegas police said a shooting happened early Sunday on the city's east side. And according to the investigators, it started with 5 men were denied entry into a house party. And they later returned and fired multiple rounds into the house from a car. And officers responded just after 1 a.m. with the suspects already gone. They found one woman that was dead, and she had been shot multiple times. And 2 other people at the home were transported to the hospital, and their injuries were determined to be non-threatening. And so the Clark County, Los Angeles Coroner's Office, Las Vegas Coroner's Office will determine the victim's identity at the cause and cause of death, and the investigation is ongoing. And people, man, I don't know, folks. I really, truly don't know, man. You guys got to start waking up. Got to wake up here. And speaking of that, here's another crazy mass, silly stuff going on. At least 10 people have been killed at a Halloween party. It's a series of Halloween party shootings, including 2 22-year-olds who died after gunmen fired into a crowded garden while revelers celebrated at a Halloween party in Chicago. There have been at least 7 shootings, including 2 in Texas, 3 in California, 1 in New Mexico, 1 in Illinois, and then the 1 in Las Vegas. And recently engaged student Holly Matthews and Jonathan Sabalos, both 22, died as they were at a Halloween party, and their families confirmed it. Matthews was newly engaged and studying to be an arborist, and she was with her friends at another party in Frankfort, Illinois, when they decided to go to the Joliet Township party. They were there briefly and decided to leave when men began firing shots at attendees from an elevated position in the backyard near the DJ booth. Holly's father, Stephen Matthews, stated she was just a young girl in a Halloween costume at a Halloween party and lost her life for no reason. The party guest, called Nathan, who was a friend of Sabalos, said he was a good person and a straight-A student. Witnesses were left astonished and shell-shocked after the shooting. One Adolfo Sandoval, a party guest, stated, "Everyone was having a good time. We were back there dancing, and then all of a sudden a group of people just started shooting, just started firing shots, and everybody went down. And when they started shooting, they felt the ricochet of bullets, and they felt when they started feeling them and pushing my girlfriend to the side, and I fell with her. It was getting back up. They started stomping on me, running over me, so the people stampeding, trying to get out of there." And 2 other guests said they heard popping sounds and saw a wave of people running out of the party for their lives. They said everybody was scrambling over each other and climbed over a man in front of them on the floor. And in the latest shootings in Joliet Township, and it's like, it's just ridiculous, man. All this stuff. They said they had another shooting that happened at a party in Stockton, California. And that was on October 29th. Texarkana, Texas. Gunmen opened fire on the 30th with less than an hour after a separate shooting in Texarkana, East Texas. Shot was fired at Octavia's Event Center in Texas just before midnight. In Gilroy, California, a deadly shooting also occurred in the early hours of Saturday. Another Halloween situation. Sacramento, 2 dead and 5 hurt. Officials said there were hundreds of people at the party where the shooting happened. And Albuquerque, New Mexico, 2 dead and 4 hurt at a large house party on man, it's just ridiculous. And that one in Joliet, and they had one in Houston last night. An 18-year-old woman died and 3 others were hurt at a Halloween party it's like ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. And people are unsure as to what happened or why the shootings began, and they did not know any of the people and if they were invited to the party or not. And it's like, man, I'm telling you, man, people lost their lives going to a Halloween party. Okay. Okay. So we have got an ex-cop arrested and charged for fatal shooting of a disabled man in Corona, California. A former LAPD department officer who opened fire during an altercation inside a Corona Costco in 2019, killing a 32-year-old man and injuring his parents, was arrested today and on charges of voluntary manslaughter and assault with a semi-automatic firearm. Salvatore Sanchez was arrested in Riverside County, according to the State Attorney General's office, which handled the case. Sanchez was initially avoided prosecution, with Riverside County grand jury declining 3 months after the shooting to indict him. Riverside County District Attorney Mike Hestron announced at the time he would abide by the grand jury's decision and not pursue a case. But the state attorney general agreed to review the shooting leading to Monday's arrest. Where there's reason to believe a crime has been committed, we will seek justice, Attorney General Rob Bonta said in a statement. That's exactly what these charges are about: pursuing justice after an independent and thorough review of the evidence and the law. Ultimately, any loss of life is a tragedy, and being licensed to carry a gun doesn't mean you're not accountable for how you use it, no matter who you are. Nobody's above the law. The charges stem from the shooting that occurred on June 14, 2019 inside the Costco store. And French's parents, Russell and Paola, were also both wounded in the shooting. And Corona police said the then off-duty officer was shopping at Costco with his family, holding his child in his arms when, without provocation, a male unknown to the officer's family assaulted the officer. The Frenches were shopping when they approached the food sample table with sausages. The Sanchez was also at the sample table holding his son. The French family and their attorney stated they have conceded that Kenneth French shoved Sanchez to the ground for no unknown reason. According to the officer's attorney, Sanchez briefly lost consciousness, and when he awoke, he was on the ground, and his 18-month-old son was with him, screaming. And Winslow said the officer had no choice but to use deadly force. The French family has claimed they pleaded with Sanchez not to shoot, telling the officer that their son, who had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, was largely nonverbal, had mental health issues, and they also claimed they were backing away from Sanchez when the shooting occurred. Corona police said earlier that Kenneth French was shot once in the shoulder and 3 times in the back, while Paola French was shot in the back and her husband was shot in the abdomen, resulting in the loss of a kidney. The LA Police Commission later determined that Sanchez acted outside department policy by drawing his weapon and using deadly force. And LAPD Chief Michael Moore's report on the incident stated the officer felt as if he had been shot after being struck by French. When Sanchez looked back at French, the officer said it appeared French may have been holding a firearm, although it was not recovered in French's possession. French's parents sued the city of Los Angeles and the officer, and the LA Superior Court lawsuit alleges battery, negligence, civil rights violations, and both intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress. Galipo, the French family attorney, called the shooting a complete overaction on behalf of this police officer. So it's a lot of crazy stuff going on, man. A lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. I'm going to make this my last one here. The United States reaches an $88 million settlement for black victims of white supremacists. The Department of Justice announced an $88 million settlement on Thursday with victims of a white supremacist who shot dead 9 black churchgoers in South Carolina in 2015. The settlement stems from the allegations that the FBI was negligent when it failed to prohibit the sale of a gun by a licensed firearm dealer to the attacker, Dylan Roof, the Department of Justice stated. Roof, which is 27 years old now, a self-proclaimed white supremacist who wanted to start a race war, has been sentenced to death for the massacre of the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston. He was convicted in December 2016 on 33 federal counts, including hate crimes resulting in death, and he later pleaded guilty to 9 state charges of murder in order to avoid the death penalty in those cases. On the evening of the killings, Roof, then 21, had joined a Wednesday Bible study group at the church before gunning down those that were praying. People in the act of praying, and he gunned them down like they were animals. He was later found to have a website of photos of him posing with neo-Nazi and white supremacy symbols. The mass shooting at Mother Emanuel AME Church was a horrific hate crime that caused immeasurable suffering for the families and the victims of the survivors, State Attorney General Merrick Garland said, announcing the settlement. Since the day of the shooting, the Department of Justice has sought to bring justice to the community, first by a successful hate crime prosecution, and today by settling the civil claims. I'm telling you, man, the settlements range from $6 million to $7.5 million for relatives, and of the 9 victims, and $5 million for each of the 5 survivors. Families of the Emmanuel 9 and survivors sued the government for wrongful death and physical injuries. And the slain included the Reverend Pickney, pastor of the AME Emmanuel Church, a state senator, as well as other pillars of the community. They all share deep devotion to the church, known as Mother Emanuel, and passed that faith along, going to their families, many of whom offered Roof forgiveness. Y'all. When he appeared in court just days after the attack, the FBI has acknowledged that Roof's drug possession arrest should have prevented him from buying a gun. So this guy had been, already a convicted felon, and they still allowed him to buy this gun that he killed these people with. Oh well, here we go, folks. Crazy, crazy, crazy place. Crazy.